I'm an American who has lived in Australia for the past 26 years, and there are a few reasons why I think Americans should not consider moving here for good, unless they're willing to do something they might consider un-fn-thinkable. I'm about to share why and give a better solution for Americans who are keen to escape the current chaos of the US, including what to do for work. So if you're an American eyeing Australia as a political refuge, but you have no idea how to make it happen or what you do for work, then this is for you, fellow Yankee Doodle Dandy. Welcome to Hexotica, the place where unconventional creatives learn how to turn their creativity into online income to fund the self-reliant alternative lifestyle of their dreams. I'm your host, Christine Rice, and this is episode 25. So welcome back to Hexotica Signets. If you've been listening to this, today's topic is probably going to attract a lot of people who have not listened to the podcast or who are interested in Australia and want to know more about it. So if you are new here to the podcast, welcome. This is where we talk about our ugly duckling fears, which is why I call my listeners a signet, and how to overcome them to have the alternative lifestyle of our dreams. The dream being right now for my fellow Americans to leave the country and live somewhere else, right? And here we are in week 2 of 2026. It's congratulations for all of us that we have survived because a lot has happened already, right? In the US with my fellow Americans there who want to escape, you're probably going crazy because ICE has become a lot more like ISIS. And here in Australia, I had to evacuate my home last Friday because of out of control bushfires, which unfortunately did take some lives in the rural areas here of Victoria where I live. But I'm safe. Where I live is safe. A lot of these fires that got out of control were pretty far from where I am, but we were under a catastrophic fire warning. So when that happens, we don't mess around. We get out. I'm on a mountain, so if a fire should break out, it'd be very hard for me to leave here. So the best thing that I can do is to heed the warnings when we have these 40-degree days with high heat and high winds, which is for my American listeners, like over 100 degrees, super, super hot, dry conditions. We just got to get off the mountain and stay safe. So my partner and I packed up the car with our dogs and we went to his godmother's house for the night. And there, as soon as I got away from the mountains, I was able to finally relax. It was one of the scariest days that I've had in many years. I survived a big storm here in 2023 where 8 houses got decimated. So I have a bit of tree PTSD. I mean, there's no better way to describe it. When there's really strong winds and I hear the wind sound like a train outside, it gets to me. And that morning before we left, I was physically shaking. I didn't notice it until I was having my first coffee of the day, but I was so scared when all these warnings going off with the phone going off. It was a very scary time. But it's all good now. The temperature has come right back down and literally I was wearing a sweater yesterday. That's the Melbourne weather for you though. There's a reason why Crowded House made that amazing song 4 Seasons in a Day, because that's how Melbourne is. It's not consistent like Georgia where I grew up. So today I'm going to be talking about what it's like living in Australia as an American for those this is an episode primarily aimed at Americans who are considering moving to Australia. And I've had 26 years of experience here. So hopefully you will find this very enlightening. And if you're Australian listening to this, some of the things I say are probably not going to make a lot of sense, or you're not going to really understand where I'm coming from. This is a very much American point of view that I'm going to be giving you. So it's for my Americans who are feeling like they need to get out of America. They need to escape the chaos there. And they're looking for a place to move overseas, whether it's temporarily or for good. I've been here 26 years, so I've got a lot of things to say about Australia. And haven't really spoken a whole lot about what it's like to be an American Australian, an American in Australia. So if this is a topic that I feel a lot of people need to hear, then I've got a lot more to say about it than what will be in this episode. But this, I hope, is a purely informational episode, which is going to help you to make a plan and have some ideas of what your options are. So if you have been listening to Hexotica previously, then you know that I've got this thing where if you comment a hexia on the video that you see on YouTube, or if you see me post this around social media, that is kind of our secret code for me to know that you are a listener and that I will support you back. I will follow you. I'll give you the support back. And I thank you so much for being here. So before we kick this off, I also want to mention that I have a new thing that I've just started to do to help and support businesses that are not yet ready to jump into my mentoring programs. And I'm calling this the SWAN Treasure Map. The SWAN Transformation Marketing Strategy is my method of helping people with my mentoring. So this is the SWAN Transformation Marketing Strategy Treasure Map. Now, previously, over the 9 years of being a social media manager, I offered this as a roadmap, but I'm calling it a treasure map to be a little bit more on brand with Hexotica now. And what it is a full audit of your business. And I'm looking at how you are working with the 5 essential foundations of marketing, what works, what doesn't work, and what may help you to start to get the conversions to get people from followers into buyers. So if you're interested in this, I'm offering it at a below grocery cost, like the less than what it costs to go to Kohl's or Woolies to get a grocery shop done. It's a one-off service. It is custom. It's personalized. And we jump on the phone afterward to talk about it. So this is a way for you to access 9 years of social media experience and marketing experience in a very easy and simple format that will help you to make some money this year, because that's what we're all about here. That's what I'm here to help you do. So I'm super excited to offer you the SWAN Transformation Marketing Strategy Treasure Map, a custom audit and look at what you're doing right and what you might be doing wrong in your business. And you can get that by clicking the link in the show notes or below this video. And I'm very excited to talk about my country today, my home country, which I haven't really shared a whole lot about here. I've talked about how I moved to Australia years ago in previous episodes. I've talked about how I became a social media manager, a digital nomad. But today I'm talking about some very specific things about my experiences here as an American in Australia. So first things first, which I know is the burning questions that my American listeners will have, which is, how was I able to move from the US to Australia? And while there are many, many different options for you to move here that I'm going to cover in this episode, I hope that you don't hate me because I won the birth lotto. My mother is Australian. So she arranged for me to have citizenship when I was born in Georgia. So I am a dual American and Australian. I have 2 passports. Very, very lucky, I know. But that is how I ended up here. Okay, so don't hate me. I know I'm a lucky bitch for that. But I will cover how you can move here. So the reasons why, though, I left when I was 25 years old are very complicated. And I go back to having grown up in Atlanta, Georgia, with a father who was from Michigan and a mother who was from Australia. And so I was a complete alien growing up in the Bible Belt. Yeah, it didn't feel like anything familiar to me. My mother had this Australian culture, which is very different. And my father had a northern kind of culture, different accent, everything. And the South is kind of like, I think, what's her name from Home Sweet Home said it perfectly. She said, you need a passport to come here. It's such a different kind of place, right? And so I didn't feel like I belonged my whole life. And my mother was always saying, you know, in Australia, we don't need a license for this. In Australia, we do this. In Australia, we do that. I was hearing about Australia my entire life. I grew up on Vegemite. I grew up hearing all the old Waltzing Matilda, the Bush stories, the Kookaburra story, all of the stories, all of the beautiful children's books, the lollies that my aunties and my grandmother would send to us. And so it just felt like familiar culture to me from a very, very young age. So when I got old enough after uni to travel, of course I came here. Of course I came to check it out. And I'll talk more in detail about why I stayed, but that's the background. I was born with it. My mother gave me the citizenship. She kind of wishes that she didn't sometimes now because I left and she's still over there. But I'm so grateful that she did. And for me, I've always tried to get them to come over here, especially in the last few years. But that's how I ended up here. So let's jump into first how you can come over here. So if I were not an Australian, I would have a few options. Let's get into them. Okay, so there are 4 main ways that you can come and live in Australia. The first way is the tourist visa, ETA, Electronic Travel Authority. Americans need this to visit for up to 3 months. This is basically a tourist visa. If you were going to come over here just to travel around, you could do it for up to 3 months on this visa. But if you wanted to stay longer, you can easily apply for 6 to even 12 months with this visa. This is great if you plan to live here on your savings or if you already have remote work. But you cannot work like a normal Australian here on this visa. You can't get any of the luscious democratic socialist benefits that we've got here. So it's a very short term or special visa that's maybe great for digital nomads, or if you have enough savings to come and stay here. You can travel around and enjoy it, but you can't get our free healthcare or any of the government services that we have. So it's just a short-term solution. The next option is to get a work visa. Now, this is a better way to live and get some actual benefits here. You can get an Australian employer to sponsor you. This type of visa is good for up to 4 years, just long enough to see one orange tyrant's passing before you return home, right? So you can get this visa if you have a skill that we Aussies need, okay? Because we have here a massive brain drain issue where all of our top talent and professionals tend to go to England or go overseas where the money is better. Some of them went to the US and they're probably coming back now. But we're very short of some critical skills here. So you can get this visa if you have those particular skills. We also need volunteer labor fodder for our super remote, boring as fuck rural areas here out in the bush. The bush is beautiful though. I mean, you, as an American living in Australia, you'll probably love living out there, but that's as long as you don't mind eating a few flies, right? So I've known of many people overseas to come here and get this work visa. My ex, in fact, was British and he had IT skills. So he was sponsored through a company here and he ended up getting permanent residency this way. It's a bit of paperwork, but if you have an employer who really likes you and you do a good job at your job and you've got the skills we need, this is a great way to stay here permanently. Now, the third option is to get a work and holiday visa. And I believe that this is one of the best options. If you're still under 30 years old, this is really lucky for you. This is the one that you want to go for if you're under 30, right? There's a special 2-year working holiday visa for your American ass waiting just here for you, where you can study or you can work part-time. So many students come here and they end up staying longer with this visa because they have a skill that, again, we desperately need here. For example, doctors or pilots. So if you have any of these skills or you want to study in Australia, you can get the student visa. And this is only if you are under 30 years old. And the fourth option is to get married to an Australian. Yep, that old cracker, which is a partner visa. Now, I don't advise marriage for anyone who loves their freedom. I'm not married. But getting married just to escape your home country would be pretty pathetic, right? So don't do that. There are better ways to work here. And I'm about to show you the one that I would choose above all of these, right? And this is one that I did not need personally because I'm a lucky bitch and I have Australian citizenship, dual passports. So keep listening and I'll let you know what that option is. So now that I've covered the options that you have to come here and you're thinking that maybe one of them might work for you, let me talk about why I love Australia generally, and then I'll talk about why I love it as an American here. And then I'm going to tell you why I don't recommend moving here permanently. All right, so here's the reasons why I love Australia, all the things that made me stay so long. I never planned to move here, right? It just happened by accident because over and over again, I just kept choosing the lifestyle here over what I saw my friends and family living back in Georgia. I came here 26 years ago for a cousin's wedding. I was only intent on staying here like a few weeks or even months before heading back to Japan. I had a visa to work in Japan and I was intent to go back there and continue to teach English as a second language as I had for a year. But I came over to Melbourne and the number one reason that I decided to stay in Australia was I fell in love with Melbourne, Victoria. Now, Melbourne is the coolest city. It's just chock full of culture, art, music. It's the coolest city south of the equator, in my humble opinion. After growing up in the suburbs of Atlanta, this amazing city was just everything that I had dreamt of, right? It was walkable, it was safe, and it wasn't too big. It had clean, safe public transport like everywhere. It had beautiful old Victorian architecture, and it had lots of nightlife and a music scene that rivaled Athens, Georgia, where I had attended the University of Georgia. Now, what I really loved too was it was not as hot as Hotlanta. Even on its warmest days, it wasn't humid heat. It's very dry heat. So you don't sweat like you do in Georgia. In Georgia, it's like a wet blanket on you, but here it's a very dry heat. So as long as you're under the shade, you're usually okay, except for the maybe super, super hot days. So there was just so much that I loved about this city. I often would say that if Australia didn't have Melbourne, I probably wouldn't have stayed here because the other cities were kind of like, they're nice, but Melbourne was just like, it just rocked my world. So I've totally fell in love with Melbourne. And then after 16 years of living in the city, I moved out to my favorite area, the Dandenong Ranges, where I am now. The Dandenong Ranges are emerald green, luscious fern tree gullies, hills. They're about an hour east of Melbourne, and it's a gorgeous, gorgeous touristy area. And I live here now in a cute little A-frame cottage right on the edge of the Dandenong Ranges National Forest. Now, the number of birds that land on my deck here every morning is insane. Cockatoos, rainbow lorikeets, king parrots, rosellas, magpies, currawongs, doves, and of course, the lovely, iconic kookaburra. I regularly see echidnas, wombats, wallabies. Just when I'm taking my dogs for a walk, I'll see all these animals around here. It's a prime tourist area, and I am extremely fortunate to be living here up in the hills, as we call it. Now, I could list many other generic things that I love about Australia. The stunning wildlife, the natural scenery, the laid-back culture, the fantastic wineries. But let me zoom in here now for the American point of view. A lot of my Australian listeners it's probably not going to make sense, or you're going to be like, what? It's going to be a bit strange to hear this, but this is my perspective as an American here. First of all, let's talk about the place itself. Everywhere here feels like a Legoland to me, as in the streets and the towns are just tidy AF. Things are newer, they're nicer, they're cleaner, and there's just generally less decay and empty lots of garbage strewn, undeveloped land here than there is in the US. And there's also less poverty. So I grew up going to Florida beaches every summer, for example. I love Florida, right? But when you visit Even like the smallest little podunk seaside town here in Australia, it's gorgeous. It's clean, it's nice, bright, welcoming, and there's not a million rundown motels from the 1960s like there are in Florida. And there's not these rundown, shabby, shell-covered souvenir shops here. Like, I did love those growing up, but I mean, Florida has a lot of ugly places, a lot of ugly lots, a lot of decaying old motels and old buildings and strip malls that are just like left to decay, right? Here, you just don't see that. Properties are kept in really well-maintained, clean, kind of newer, used, beautiful conditions. I'm always just very shocked that no matter how far I go to a little seaside town or little town here, especially in the tourist areas, how nice things are. Now, things might be a bit different out in the rural areas, of course. If you're going out into the middle of nowhere, of course, things are not going to be looking like a Lego land. But a lot of the urbanized areas here, the big cities, they look like little Lego lands to me. Everything is just so nice, like plastic. All right. The next thing is Australia makes the most of its natural beauty. Australian natural scenery is the biggest global tourist draw here, right? So they go all out to make the most of every beautiful natural place that they have. They accommodate it toward tourists. So, for example, just recently, there's a local lookout here not far from my house, and it was a popular place for people to stop and look out over the trees and the hills, and there was a little cafe across the street. So they have built this entire huge viewing deck now, and they've made an indigenous garden with information plaques and everything. They just made the most of it because it was a stop that a lot of tourists would make. So they've made it so beautiful now. And you see this everywhere in Australia. There's a lot of money put into making public places and tourist places and natural scenery like just nicer and nicer. Every year I've been here, if I go back to a tourist spot, it's like, oh, now there's a cafe. Now there's a new restaurant. Now there's a new bridge here. Like, it's just well maintained, and they make the most of their natural scenery. And I love that about Australia. So an interesting thing for my American listeners to know about Australia is that you cannot build or own a beach in Australia. All the beaches are considered public property. So when you go on a beach walk, you can just keep walking. You'll never end up on a fence or a wall side like you would in Florida. You can just keep walking and walking and walking if the beach is there. It's amazing. All the beaches are considered public property. The next thing is maybe a little bit personal, but the wineries. Oh, the wineries. Now, if there's one thing that I am going to wax lyrical about for the rest of my life, it is the absolute gorgeousness of the Australian wineries. And I feel like when you come to Australia, it's one of the most kind of iconic Australian things that you can do. It's just like you have to come and visit the wineries. If you've never been to a winery in your life in the US, and personally, like, I haven't been to the California winery, so I can't compare it to that. But I know my first experiences in Australia were with wineries. I had an uncle who owned, his family owned some vineyards in Perth, and I did some grape picking and came over to Melbourne. And I've been to so many weddings and birthday celebrations at wineries. And to me, it is kind of it just captures the Australian spirit. It captures the Australian taste. And it's not just because the wine is fantastic. It is. It's so fantastic here. And it's a lot cheaper than hard alcohol because we've got so much of it. But it's because wineries are just such beautiful places to visit. You drive out past all the beautiful vineyards to the winery, and each has its own unique character and style. Out here where I am, I'm near the Yarra Valley, and you've got very fancy glam ones like Shandong, or you've got provincial ones like Yering Farm, or you've got very minimalist modern ones like Three Oaks. Sorry, not Three Oaks. Three Oaks is a really good brewery with very good cider. I meant Oak Ridge. Oak Ridge is a super modern winery designed by Melbourne architects Denton Corker Marshall. Denton Corker Marshall has done many of the very, very famous architectural features that you see here in Melbourne. And they have a very, very super minimalist style, which you can see at Oak Ridge, which has very, very good wine as well. Australia has 2,156 wineries all across the country, and most of them make fantastic tourist destination spots for visiting. And at each one, you can learn about the wine, have your tasting, and you can have an amazing meal, all while having stunning views. So definitely do not miss our wineries if you come to Australia. Now let's finally get to why I would not recommend moving here permanently, despite all the amazing things that I've just talked about. It's now time for some of the bad news. So Americans cannot live anywhere without paying double tax. Yep, if this is news to you, I'm very sorry to have to break it to you. The US is the only country with double taxation. It is the only country that forces you to lodge taxes each year, no matter where you are living on the planet. It doesn't matter if you were born in another country and you never set foot in the US, but you were an American citizen made by your parents, or if you've been living outside of the US for 26 years, as I have. You have to pay taxes. You have to lodge taxes. Now, there is only one way that you can avoid paying it. And this is the unthinkable thing that I mentioned from the beginning. And that is you must relinquish your American citizenship. For good, forever. That's right. The only way that you can get out of double taxation is to not be an American. So good luck getting back into the US with the current anti-immigration administration if you choose that route. I, for one, I want to hold on to my American passport so long as it is difficult to get back in the States and they're looking at people's social media and kicking people out for stupid reasons. However, there are a few caveats for you. If you're earning under 130K USD, you're probably not going to have to pay anything anyway, right? That's the minimum that you have to make before you have to pay anything. And lodging then is just a formality that is required by law. So that's going to be a huge relief for most Americans who want to live abroad anywhere in the world, right? Like you have to be making 130 USD, not in Australian dollars, in American dollars. So that's actually more like 190 Australian dollars. Now, particularly for Americans living in Australia, this can be a huge pain in the ass that you may want to consider if you're thinking about moving here permanently. Especially if you're going to live and work here, and especially if you're going to run a business or if you're going to buy any property. It's going to make it a lot hairier. And you might have to, at some point, if you're a high earner, make the decision to relinquish your American citizenship. So that is something that you want to consider if you're considering moving anywhere in the world permanently. If you're a high earner, if you're starting a business, running a business, or if you are planning to own a property. So I have a guy that I follow for American tax advice, and I'll leave the link to his YouTube channel in the show notes or below the video. If you are an American who wants to know more details about this, he is the person to consult because he is a tax expert. Reason number 2, Australia is an island. Are you willing to pay over $1,000 every time you want to leave, to go anywhere, to see your family? And especially as an American. This is the biggest bugbear that I have with living here, and it is just how bloody far we are from the US. I don't think a lot of Americans who haven't been to Australia realize just how far we are. It is a long, long flight, and it's expensive. So over the years, I've made many trips home for Christmas, for visiting family, where I could have bought a car or I could have gone on a European vacation. There's a lot of other things I could have spent money on, but I spent all this money just to go see my family back to Georgia. And it's a lot. It adds up to a lot, but it's also so much time. So if you are planning to live here permanently, I would say if you've got any loved ones or family back home, you're going to have to pay a lot to see them. If you're going here to visit here, just fine. That's short term, but long term, that distance, it really, really grows on you. And it can be really, really hard to be this far away from loved ones. It didn't used to bother me as much when I was younger, right? But as I've gotten older, those long 16, 18-hour flights, they have become very uncomfortable. And this is one of the reasons why I need to make lots of money, because I want to be able to fly first class eventually. That's possible. But right now, what I have found, the route that works best for me is to take a domestic flight with Jetstar to Hawaii and spend a couple of nights in Hawaii, relaxing and resting before I make that next leg to Atlanta. Because trying to go all the way from Melbourne to Sydney to Los Angeles to Atlanta, like I always used to, or through other cities and countries, it takes so much time. I've seen a lot of countries just on my way to the US because I got really tired of going just directly to the US. So I've seen like Tokyo, Fiji, Tahiti. I've been to many different places where if I'm flying that airline, I'll just ask to have a stopover and then I can see that place. But I can also importantly just have a little bit of a break from that long flight. But yeah, it's hard. The distance is a lot. So you'll want to consider that if you think about moving here, like it's an island. It costs a lot of money just to go to even just Fiji or Bali. Bali's probably the most popular. It's not a lot of money if you live in Darwin to go to Bali. I've got a lot of family that live in Bali and they just go, Darwin, and they just go to Bali like for the weekend. But for the rest of us, we feel very, very isolated here. You have to pay a lot of money and it's going to take a lot of time. For me personally, I had to change my work because of those long flights. I didn't want to go for just like a week or 2 weeks. It makes it very, very difficult. So that's why I'm also going to tell you about the work that I do and that you can do later on in this episode because of the distance. All right, moving on to the third reason. Australia is expensive as fuck. It's super expensive here. Not at first when you arrive, because you've got all of your American dollars buying around 30 cents more per dollar. As of today, when I recorded this, your American dollar is worth $1.49 in Australia. So it's good times when you come or if you're visiting. But once all those greenbacks are gone and you are working for the Aussie dollar, you'll soon get sticker shock seeing how much more things cost here compared to the US. Major cities like Sydney, Canberra, Melbourne, Brisbane, and Perth are among the more expensive cities in the world on various city cost of living lists. An average cocktail price is $20. A cup of coffee is $6. And a can of Coca-Cola is $4. And that's exorbitant for me coming from Atlanta, the home of Coca-Cola, where I always used to spend 30 cents on a can of Coke. Yeah. Rent is also skyrocketing here due to property being viewed as a cash cow and investment rather than just a place where people can have shelter. They've been doing this negative gearing thing here in Australia for so many years that most properties are now seen as investments rather than just as homes. Huge problem here. It's literally cheaper to travel to Bali for your vacation than it is to travel around Australia. But the upside here is that if you do get a full-time job, even if it's at like a convenience store, a bookshop, or a cafe, it is a living wage. The wages are great here. This is what I did when I first came. I lived in a traveler's share house and I got a job at a cafe and I had plenty of money. I was doing well for a while, like just really quick cafe jobs that you can get. They will pay a lot. So if you're coming over here with the work visa, just as a tourist for 2 years, and you can get part-time work and you get a good share house with other travelers, you've got it made. Like the money from just a cafe job is great. So that's the upside to it. There's no peanuts slave wages here like there is in the US, right? You'll get paid well for hospitality jobs in bars and restaurants. Professional employment pays very well in most industries and typically comes with 4 weeks of annual vacation and benefits. So if you become Australian or you get permanent residency here, you can take advantage of the amazing healthcare here, which is practically nothing compared to the private healthcare we have in the US, of course. Now, if you're Australian and you, let's get ready for a rant here. If you're Australian and you dare to come in here and tell me, yeah, nah, what about the levy? What about the levy that we pay, right? They pay this levy on top of their salary here to pay for healthcare at a certain threshold, right? And I just think I've had this conversation when I've told people that the universal healthcare here is it's very low cost to free, especially if you are below a certain threshold. People are like, yeah, well, we pay the levy. Well, bitch, that levy is like pocket change compared to what Americans are paying for their health insurance. You've got no idea how lucky your little piss change levy is compared to what Americans are paying if they get coverage with their insurance that they're paying out the nose for. There is no comparison. I have never once heard about an Australian going bankrupt or dying because they can't afford essential medical help in this country. You can be homeless and you're going to get medical help in this country. You will never go bankrupt for having cancer or a serious condition in this country. Huge difference. So even though we are super, super expensive, if you are a permanent resident here or if you're able to stay permanently, there are a lot of kind of, things that kind of make up for it. But if you're not, if you're just visiting, you don't plan to stay here permanently, be prepared for some serious sticker shock with how expensive it is, especially now with our cost of living crisis and whatnot. There's not a lot of competition in Australia. So there's like 3, maybe only 2 really, grocery stores that kind of knock it out. And they're always like raising each other's prices because, yeah, it's super, super dodgy. And they're trying to look into it now to lower the prices. But because of the smaller population, there's less competition and everything is just a lot more expensive. And even though things have gotten more expensive in the US, last time they were I did say that it was a lot more expensive. It's still cheaper than here. It's still cheaper. Still cheaper to get a cocktail, an Uber, to rent a car, to rent a house, way cheaper. And it will never be that cheap here in the US. You'll never have coupon zealots here or something like you do in the US either. We don't have coupon culture here. Okay, so now we've got to the part that many Americans have been keen to listen to, I'm sure, which is working in Australia as an American, what I recommend, how to work here. If you do not have a professional skill that Australia needs and you aren't ever going to marry an Australian, my best recommendation, if you are over 30, because there's lots of options for you if you're under 30, as I mentioned, is to continue to keep your American tax-paying status, but work for yourself. You can work for yourself, start working for yourself in the US, and then you can travel the world. You're still going to have to lodge the taxes in the US and probably in the country that you're staying in too, if you stay for a long time. So I know you'd rather not have your tax money going to bomb children in another country, right? You don't want to pay American taxes if you especially are feeling really disillusioned with the government there, as many of us are. But paying the American tax man is the price of keeping that American passport. Unless you are willing to relinquish your citizenship for good, you really do not have another choice. Okay? The way that I got around living as an American in Australia, wanting to go home to the US to see family as often as possible and needing to go for a long time, I wanted to go for at least 2-3 weeks. Most often, recently, it's 5 or 6 weeks, is to become a freelance social media manager. That's what I did personally. Starting your own business is the best option for you. If you're really feeling trapped, if you don't know where to go, if you don't want to have to go through all the paperwork of getting permanent residency in another country. And you can do that quickly if you choose to become a service provider, which is what social media management is. Now, I'm not going to advise that you definitely become a social media manager, but that you think about starting your own business so that you can work anywhere in the world as a digital nomad. Now, I have the story on how I became a social media manager and many other things about digital nomadism and working for yourself on my blog, hexotica.com.au. So check that out if you want to go in detail. Also, some of the other podcast episodes I've covered how to do this because I'm all about starting and running your own business. But I do recommend if you're an American right now and you want out, you need to be in control of your own income. Start a business. It's really not that difficult to do. And if you do service providing, that is the easiest way to earn money. I've written a blog post specifically on that. Service providing, there's always a demand for online services. And this is the thing that AI is not ever going to compete with as well. Being able to deliver services, do one-on-one work is the fastest route to an income. So, in short, just ditch living in the US for now, but not forever. You don't want to have to give up your citizenship just to avoid paying double taxes, right? And you don't want to live permanently on the other side of the planet if there are any people in the States that you know you're going to miss. Just don't do it. The distance here is my biggest regret. I often think of all the European vacations that I could have taken instead of going to see my family or friends that year. And it's not our poisonous spiders or our complete lack of houses to rent here at the moment that makes it so hard to live here either. It's that there's a whole world out there for you to explore and stay a few months in each country if you focus not on moving to Australia, but on starting your own self-reliant business. Focus on creating the type of work that you need to create true global freedom for yourself. Start an online service business this year and plan to be wherever the fuck you want to be rather than in the US within just a few months. It only took me 4 months to become a social media manager after taking an online course. And that is something that I can help you do. So you have many options here. And if you are ready to get the fuck out of the US and come live in Australia or anywhere the fuck else than the US, then I can help you. If you'd like to learn what it takes to become a freelance service provider, including how to get and keep clients, how to write contracts, how to have good client communication, manage projects, and get paid, then my Swan Transformation Marketing Strategy Agency is for you. Now, this is my 12-week high-touch mentoring program to help you become a self-employed freelancer. It's especially ideal if you want to become a freelance social media manager like I was for the last 9 years. Or you can learn the freelance skills to do any other type of creative client-based work, such as content creation, copywriting, graphic design, or any other creative service skills that you can sell online. Now, to get started as soon as possible, apply to work with me by filling out a form that I'll leave a link to below this video or in the show notes. And I just want to remind my American listeners that if you are considering a mentoring program or any of Hexotica's products or offers, it's literally going to cost you a third of the cost. Like the exchange rate is in your favor. So if you'd like to work with an American here in Australia to help you get to Australia or to become a self-reliant freelancer, then look at the programs through the exchange rate. It's going to be a lot less for you. It works in your favor. But if you're not sure what you'd like to do for work, you have no idea what creative skills you could offer, then I've got something else for you for free. Sign up to my Hexotic as Fuck Travel Digital Nomad newsletter for online freelance service ideas. It's a special 10 email sequence of 10 different ways you can get work as an online service provider to work anywhere in the world as a digital nomad. And you can sign up for that with a link in the show notes or below this video. All right, my American friends and my Australian listeners as well, thank you so much for listening. I hope that this has helped you come up with some ideas for what you could do if you are trying to escape the US. There are lots of options. If you have any specific questions, feel free to reach out to me and ask me. And remember, if you leave hex yeah in the comments, I will find and support you. So thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you next week. Bye.